Controversy over Epic Games Store is continuing to grow like a sinkhole of stupidity and suck in even more willing participants to the shit show. Whilst watching this canteen brawl playing out in front of my eyes, it's starting to dawn on me that this whole situation could end up causing vastly more damage than I had initially realised. For anyone who's been following the story, it goes something like this. Epic Games Store has basically declared all-out war on Steam, and by default players, by buying out video games for exclusive distribution on Epic Games Store alone. Epic Games are basically famous for owning Fortnite and Unreal Engine, having fuck tons of money which they like to throw around, being 40% owned by Tencent, a slightly shady Chinese state-supported megacorporation, championing the principles of games as a service, having a really piss-poor launcher, an online shop, losing its customers' credit card details, and data mining its customers' hard drives and borrowing information and personal data. Steam, on the other hand, is famous for being the biggest online games launcher in the history of the known universe, having a fuck ton of money, taking a bigger split of the sale price than Epic Games Launcher, generally being quite well liked by the customers, regularly doing insane sales with up to 90% off, which is fucking awesome, being good news for the customer most of the time, letting some fairly awful content slip into the store, having an automated 2 hours play quick return policy, having great functionality, chat, achievements, reviews, forums, you name it, it probably does it. They are both greedy, cash-hungry corporations, let's not forget that. But generally speaking, Epic is great news for the game publishers, whereas Steam is great news for gamers. And for the record, I don't give a shit about game publishers getting a slightly bigger split of the money, but I do give a shit about getting video games in sales at up to 90% discount. I'll say right now, I don't harbour any ill will to any particular performer in this circus. Everyone involved is doing what they do naturally, and by that I mean trying to suck every last fucking penny out of the gamers, whilst trying to convince everyone that they are super generous, nice people looking out for our best interests. Which is bullshit. Let's be realistic here. This is not a story of heroes and villains. Lots of people are trying to construct a narrative of Epic Store being good for competition, giving players more choice, supporting indie developers. But this is all horseshit. It's all about Epic seeking power and profit in the marketplace. For itself, using aggressive, brute force and coercive tactics. This is about us being pawns in rich people's power struggles, and the people most likely to get fucked is, as always, the consumer. Some developers may well get their reputations tarnished too. The publishers will be fine though, because they were pretty unpopular to start with. Epic Games' primary tactic is using exclusivity deals to ring-fence and monopolise access to high-profile popular games and force players to use its launcher to access them. This is Epic Games starting a console war on PC. If you want to play certain much-anticipated games, you play it on the Epic Games launcher, or you can fuck off for 12 months basically. And please, don't be that fucking goon who says, you're glad PC users are getting a taste of the console wars. That's like laughing at the guy in the next prison cell whilst he's getting his cheeks busted. Because it's only a matter of time before they visit your cell and bust your cheeks, my friend. Besides, the industry loves it when we fight amongst ourselves, and they like to encourage it. PvE versus PvP, console versus PC, whilst we squabble amongst ourselves, we are not keeping an eye on them, or hassling the company to fix that thing that's still broke. Epic Games' ruthless approach is a cause for grave concern, I've been harbouring a fantasy that after the recent years of horrific AAA live service game disasters and some truly spectacular independent studio releases, 2019 would herald a period of ascendancy for indie games. Perhaps it was a rather idealistic and romantic vision, especially given my very cynical standards, but I was, and still am, really hoping to see this shift in the gaming industry. The narrative that I would like to play out, and I use the term narrative very specifically, is that gamers, pissed off with the AAA industry, will increasingly try and put its money into the hands of indie game developers and smaller studios, and we will end up with a more diverse and original selection of games being made. Hopefully with less tolerance for microtransactions and better value for the gamer. Obviously, that fantasy has a happy ending, so I should have known some giant corporation would come along and stick its fucking dick in the pie. And sure enough, that is precisely what Epic Games is doing. I appreciate that it's hard to define exactly what an indie game really is, and to be honest, I generally use the term indie as a catch-all category to describe any game or studio that is not a giant fucking corporate AAA publisher. Technically, that's not accurate, but it's a very useful term to describe small to medium-sized developers that are largely trodden under the heel of the mega powerful AAA video game giants. Ultimately, my fear is that Epic Games' aggressive approach of trying to pay off and monopolise as many indie games as it can and make them timed exclusives available only on the Epic Games Store might literally end up crippling the resurgence of indie video games and disintegrate any moral or emotive support and sympathy these companies have amongst the video game community. I'm not saying that they won't shift a lot of units in the short term and grub up a lot of money from Epic Games. What I am saying is that in the long term, I think this scenario could result in a wholesale loss of faith in the independent sector of the gaming industry, because if people's heroes all start acting exactly like the greedy, disloyal, money-grubbing AAA game publishers, then eventually gamers are going to start to view them exactly the same way they view all the other greedy fucking AAA publishers. One big problem is the Epic Games Store and the company itself. For many reasons, lots of people don't fucking like them, and many people, myself included, will simply not use the Epic Games Store launcher. It has a horrific history of poor security, having accounts hacked and compromising people's credit card details. I'm talking millions of accounts left insecure on multiple occasions. It has a track record of data mining, stealing private data from people's PCs without asking permission, such as just coding the launcher to find people's locally stored Steam data and uploading it to their servers. Analysts have discovered the Epic Games launcher doing all sorts of weird shit on people's computers over the years. Shit that it should not be doing, like analysing people's registries and other data and uploading it. Spying? The launcher itself is shit. It's a bare bones launcher with very little functionality and has no review function, which many publishers see as a selling point, because they think gamers should not be allowed to abuse their precious games by giving them unauthorised scores, because gamers are just troublemakers. I also don't like doing business with a company that has forced exclusives on PC. I don't like exclusives on console. It's anti-consumer. I'm fucked if I'll support that shit spreading to PC as well. Epic has admitted that they will readily poach games being advertised already on Steam and do not give any fucks if customers get upset about this. And not giving any fucks should frankly be Epic Games' corporate fucking slogan. Epic Games is 40% owned by Tencent, a Chinese state-backed corporation which also has a mortifying track record for not respecting privacy and private data. Spying. And as a Chinese corporation, it is obliged to share data with the Chinese government. I'm not saying they are bad people. Hell, my government spies on me all the time. But that's my government, not Beijing. There's a difference. Tim Sweeney, Epic Games' boss man and village chieftain, has openly stated his support of censorship on the Epic Store. He has spontaneously developed an allergy to adult content and shocking video games. And I guess he gets to decide what qualifies as morally acceptable. Funny that I can see a pattern emerging. Strange how Tencent buys large stakes in Western video game companies and then they suddenly start making pronouncements about self-censoring their content. Anyone else remember seeing this one before? Look, Epic Games always seem to have some cunningly crafted excuse to explain away the accusations of spying on users, stealing users' Steam data, losing account information to hackers and generally compromising its users' security and privacy. Taken in isolation, some of these laughable explanations seem to be almost as semi-believable as the half-arsed smirking apologies that accompany them. But that's not the point. They aren't in isolation. This pattern of misbehaviour is so consistent, it's become part of their fucking brand. Some people are claiming these accusations of spying on customers are ridiculous, paranoid conspiracy theories. But let's analyse that defence. Paranoid? Conspiracy theory? Really? Epic Games Store has a track record of snooping around on people's PCs and nicking customers' data off their hard drives and keeping it. They even apologised for doing it. Epic Games is 40% owned by Tencent, a company that spies for the Chinese intelligence services. Not only are they required to do this by Chinese law, in 2018 they were actually fined by the Chinese government for not censoring their own customers' communications robustly enough. How can they not be spying when they got fined for not spying well enough? In 2016, an Amnesty International privacy and security audit of Tencent's WeChat private chat application awarded it a monumental rating of fucking 0 out of 100. 0%. And if that's not enough proof, the terms and conditions of WeChat include a clause where you have to agree that the Chinese government can spy on you. I shit you not. I don't know the exact nature of the data and information sharing going on between Epic Games' core businesses, but I can say one thing with certainty. Any data shared with Tencent at any point, either now or in the future, will be heading straight to Beijing. That can't be contested, and considering Epic Games has not so far demonstrated any ability to keep its customer data out of the public domain, I'm unconvinced they can keep it secure from their own business partners. Especially when Epic Games' terms of service states clearly that they will share your personal information with its family of companies. What a fucking euphemism. Tim Sweeney can talk all night about unfair accusations, but Tencent is compelled to data share with Beijing, and Epic can't keep a fucking secret if their livelihoods depended on it, which it does. Tim Sweeney might well be 100% sincere in his reassurances, but the facts and the contracts allow for the worst case scenario. Tim's word alone is not legally binding. Tim saying everything is legit is contradicted by precedent, contract and evidence. It's super nice that he tells us that he would never do anything like that. But everyone is signing contracts saying he fucking can, and no offence, but he has a vested interest in this situation, and his verbal reassurances alone don't count for shit, really, do they? He was supposed to keep people's credit card details safe, and look how that played out. He said he wouldn't aggressively poach games off Steam, and then changed his fucking mind a few weeks later. I'm sorry, but Tim Sweeney just says whatever he thinks people want to hear, and that doesn't necessarily map onto fucking reality. I've studied both sides of this argument, and it's certainly likely that some of the specific spyware accusations levelled at Epic Games are inflated and some erroneous. but some are not. And they did violate customer trust by accessing people's private data without permission and taking it. So if there is a lack of trust, well, they brought that on themselves, and calling people out for being paranoid is a bit fucking rich under the circumstances. Are we really being paranoid about spying when a company that's been caught spying, 40% owned by a Chinese company that admits spying, reassures us that they are not spying, and we don't believe them? I would assert that it's common fucking sense to be at least slightly suspicious of these shady bastards. But the big takeaway here is that it would be much less of an issue if gamers just had a choice. If they could choose to play Metro Exodus or Outer Worlds on Steam or Epic Games Store. In fact, I probably wouldn't even be making this video if players could just decide to say, fuck that, I'm buying Phoenix Point on Steam. And this all leads me to perhaps the bigger issue of how much harm Epic might do to the landscape and ecology of the gaming world. Tim Sweeney, Epic Games overlord and spy master, has openly stated that he sees the next 5 years in the gaming industry being about rapid change. He seems convinced that fast-moving indie developers producing innovative content is going to outmaneuver the AAA businesses. This is an outcome that I am genuinely hoping for and have discussed previously. I really want this prediction to be correct. So what's his master plan? Well, he wants to fucking own their arses. He wants to buy out exclusivity on that sector of the market so that the big indie resurgence is shackled to his exclusive distribution deals. As someone who flat out does not want Epic Games Launcher on my PC, it worries me that right now it's looking like I might be locked out of many of my most anticipated games over the coming years, and any goodwill people have towards the indie studios will rapidly evaporate when customers see they will happily throw their customers and loyal supporters under the fucking bus the second a giant corporation throws a checkbook on the table. I think a lot of the emotional and moral dimensions to people's purchasing decisions are going to be permanently affected by seeing their beloved indie developers fuck over their loyal fan base in an instant without even blinking, because money. Suddenly people's personal loyalties to these little developers is going to feel misplaced. Gamers are going to feel a bit betrayed and foolish for being emotionally invested. These franchises are going to look like exactly the same kind of money-grubbing whores as the AAA studios. And this is why I was talking about narrative earlier, because I think in a lot of gamers' minds, the narrative is quickly about to transform and perhaps into a story of betrayal. There are a lot of gamers right now hoping that 2019 is going to be the year that some brilliant indie video game releases redefine the battle lines between AAA dominance and the rest of the industry. And just at the precise moment that indie studios are in ascendancy and customers have reached peak intolerance for shitty live service games and microtransactions, just as the tide is turning and everyone is rooting for the underdogs, in swoops Epic fucking Games, king of live service bullshit and microtransactions, with its huge bag of 40% Chinese state cash, and starts buying out exclusive distribution rights for every major fucking indie title people have been waiting excitedly to see released. That's like watching Braveheart, and in the final scene of the movie, William Wallace, instead of shouting freedom, takes a big bag of gold, gets a nice haircut, puts on an England shirt, and starts singing the national fucking anthem. Okay, it's a very sketchy film historically, but you get my point. And let's be honest, who doesn't like watching the battle scenes after a few beers? And I'm from London, and even I can admit that. Many people I speak to are starting to feel, for want of a better term, betrayed. They feel like their heroes are selling out. They wanted 2019 to be the year where independent video games gave the AAA publishers a run for their money, or hopefully gave the AAA giants a fucking kicking. However, it's quickly turning into a situation where the only choice is going to be between buying your games from AAA studios or buying your much beloved independent games from the fucking Epic Store. That's not much of a choice at all. For people who won't use the Epic Games launcher, that means we can't buy them in 2019 full stop. I genuinely think this could poison the waters in a lot of the gaming community, with gamers writing off everyone as a money grubber or potential money grubber. It's no longer a Jason and Goliath story. It's just fucking Goliaths clubbing each other with big bags of cash. And in a recent development to even further poison the waters, actual fucking developers are now piling onto social media to attack people critical of Epic Games' tactics. Personally, I think ground level developers are the hardest working, least rewarded and most underpaid people in the industry. But any attempt to redefine this fucking corporate shit show along the battle lines of, if you oppose Epic Games, you're anti-developer, is moronic and self-harming. They're just going to hemorrhage the sympathy of the gaming community. People are upset by what's going on, and if developers choose this moment to attack the fucking customer base, I think they are not only going to pour petrol on the flames, but they're likely to provoke a big fucking bag of fuck you from a lot of gamers. Especially when more people realise that Epic Games just announced a $100 million fund for small developers. Oh yeah, the developers probably forgot to mention that when they jumped onto social media and started hating on people. So yeah, before developers start white knighting for Epic Games and telling everyone how this games as a service championing corporation is super friendly and good for the consumer, they might want to be a bit more transparent about the fact that there is $100 million of free money up for grabs from the Epic Games Mega Grant Fund. That's really what it's called, I didn't just make that up. Strange how everyone finds religion when provided with enough cash motivation. So how is my gaming year shaping up thanks to Epic Games? Metro Exodus, an excellent game, advertised on Steam, then switched to a year-long exclusive at the last minute. I luckily pre-ordered on Steam, so I got to give it a positive review, but had to advise people to wait a year until it was no longer on Epic exclusive. Loyal fans of the franchise were fucking furious at 4A Games and THQ Nordic for pulling out at the last minute. Outer Worlds, the spiritual successor of Fallout New Vegas, massively anticipated after the catastrophic anticlimax of Fallout 76, snaffled up by Epic Games. So I won't be playing it on Steam until 2020. Needless to say, I know a lot of people who are gutted by the news that these guys pulled their knickers down behind the chip shop for a few quid and a bag of chips. Phoenix Point. This is a crowd-funded XCOM reboot with some of the original XCOM developers behind it. Was highly recommended to me and advertised as being a Steam launch on PC. I spent like 90 quid backing this Kickstarter, vastly more than the game is worth frankly, only to find out that at the last minute they caved in and decided they would take some cash and give Epic a quick blowjob behind the wheelie bins. I get it. It's a crowd-funded game and they have to feed the kids. But it's still sad to see, and I can't support this game anymore. Borderlands 3. Probably a bad example. Gearbox is run by Randy Pitchford, and I'm fairly sure he would sell copies of his games in DVD cases lined with fur made from skinned puppies if it was profitable, so this comes as no great surprise. You could probably get him to jump off a cliff if you threw a gold bar over the edge in front of him. Look, he made Aliens Colonial Marines. His crimes are already beyond measure. But most worrying for me personally, if I'm honest, is that Warhorse Studios, makers of one of my favourite games of all time, Kingdom Come Deliverance, just got bought by THQ Nordic, a division of the same company that pulled Metro Exodus from Steam and made it an Epic exclusive. I'm genuinely concerned that their next game might be an Epic Games Store exclusive as well. I don't have many heroes, and it would break my fucking heart if that shit played out in front of my eyes. Epic Games and Tencent are going to continue these tactics as long as they work. So unless consumers hold their ground and boycott the Epic exclusives until they're out on general release, they will continue to buy out exclusives with smaller game studios, independent game titles, and some now relatively big publishers. It's not for me to tell you what to do, but if you don't like these shitty practices, then you have to vote with your wallets. You also need to be vocal on social media, Reddit and forums. I'm not saying argue with people, like I do, just politely state your case and get the word out. I'm not buying that game because I'm not being forced to buy it on one platform, I'm not compromising my personal privacy and security, I'm not supporting a console war on PC, I'm not supporting anti-consumer practices. Epic Games Store does not support user reviews and is pro-censorship. Just make people realise there are issues to consider here. This whole shit show will likely result in a wholesale loss of sympathy for many beloved independent studios, a lot of tarnished brands, splitting the PC player base, and I also think that when you've lost people's loyalty, they will be much more likely to consider pirating the game instead. Seriously, I do. If someone desperately wants to play a game, refuses to install the Epic launcher, they will have one choice: don't play the game or pirate it. And people will feel more morally justified about that when the decision is being made in a climate where their beloved game franchises are selling out to Epic exclusivity. If people are prepared to pay for it on Steam and the publisher won't let them, they will feel justified in pirating. I'm not supporting or encouraging piracy. I'm just explaining the potential thought processes involved. Everyone is desperately trying to spin this story into something it's not. It's not about providing better value to the gamer. It's not about providing a better livelihood to the ground level developer. It's not about healthy competition in the marketplace. This is about a very large corporation, 40% Chinese owned, brute forcing itself into the marketplace using any fucking tactics it can with no regard for the consumer. Be mindful though, if there is one thing I've learned about the video game industry, it's that when there is a company throwing around a big pile of cash, there will no doubt be a fuckton of people ready to promote Epic Games and anything they choose to do, because on the internet, large piles of cash buys you friends. Cash will buy YouTubers, cash will buy internet celebrities, cash will buy you positive press coverage, and cash appears to be buying the loyalty of a lot of very vocal developers now too. A lot of people defending Epic Games, coincidentally, stand to gain a lot of fucking cash from this scenario. Go figure. At some point, when your favourite indie sequel ends up an Epic Games Store exclusive, and you get pissed off, no doubt some snide, unsympathetic fuck monkey will turn around and quote the immortal, moronic corporate defence most often associated with shitty microtransactions and loot boxes. If you don't like it, then don't buy it. And in my humble fucking opinion, this should be precisely your fucking plan. Don't buy it. If that is the only option for responding to Epic Games Store exclusives, if that is your only choice as a consumer, then make it. If you don't like it, don't buy it is your only tactical option in this scenario, then seize the fucking day. Don't buy it. Tell your friends not to buy it. Go on the subreddit and tell them why you are not buying it. But for now, good luck and happy hunting.